Today I'm going to try to share with you everything I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years about a healthy lifestyle and getting in shape and coming up with a plan that really works for us. I reviewed a number of expert opinions by doctors, medical researchers, professors, and other experts in the nutrition and fitness field. A healthy lifestyle, I've broken it down into three categories: whole and natural foods, the water and the beverages that we drank, and regular exercise. And the reason I'm doing this in the pool, by the way, is because I've often mentioned to Courtney. Courtney's a busy executive in one of the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area cities, and I said, why don't you have your meetings in the pool? You'll all listen to each other and get some exercise at the same time. And I thought, well, just to make the point, I'll put this video while I'm exercising as well. When we say whole foods, we're talking about trying to eat the whole part of whatever the food is. So if it's an apple, we eat the skin. If it's a vegetable, we don't have the vegetable juice, we have the pulp and all the fiber that's in the vegetable. If it's a chicken or if it's an egg, we eat all of it. We don't separate if it's an egg, we don't separate the yolk from the white part. And if it's a chicken, you eat the skin, you eat the liver, you eat all parts. And if we're talking about a natural food, we're talking about what you'd find in the garden, on a farm, in a river, in the ocean, in the mountains. It's just the whole concept of what was naturally on Earth, naturally occurring on the Earth. And if we can just think in terms of whole and natural foods as our diet, it will make a tremendous contribution to our health. Now, why would we, when we're talking about plants, why do we want to concentrate on this notion of whole and natural? Well, it's because we want all the nutrients and all the fiber. If you're talking about an avocado or the nuts or grains or vegetables, you want all of it. You just want the whole part, and you want a natural, you want something that was grown or raised naturally. And the reason for that is because the fiber is locked up is all part of a whole and natural food, and all the nutrients are all linked together with the fiber if we're talking about plants. And if you try to separate these whole and natural foods apart and just pick and choose this or that, as you'll see in this video, you'll be missing out on a lot of nutrients and fiber. Just to back up here for a moment about fiber. Fiber is what is only found in plants, fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, and it's the part of the plant that gives it structure and also protection. So if you talk about an apple, for example, the apple has a skin, and that's providing protection and a structure for the apple. And if you contrast that with animals, we don't have fiber. We have bones for our structure. Fiber is not absorbed in the body. It goes right through you. And that's one of the reasons it's never really been classified as an essential nutrient, although I think that many people recognize that its fiber is just as essential as any of the other nutrients that we get in our diet. some of the benefits of fiber are that it will slow the absorption of sugars, and a very important sugar called glucose. Glucose is a sugar that is often referred to in something called a glycemic index and a glycemic load. And basically that's the amount of sugar that your body would absorb in a given amount of time for the type of food that you're eating. It's a very important concept, and we'll talk about that a little later in the video. Fiber will reduce the absorption of fats and cholesterol in your body. You can have a high-fat meal, and if you've eaten that with fiber, remember, plants or vegetables or fruit or nuts or seeds or grains and whatnot, then many times that will reduce the amount of fat that you're actually absorbing into your body. So sometimes if you overindulged with a fatty meal, you could find that you wouldn't, not all the fat would be absorbed, and that would be good under some circumstances. Another benefit of the fiber is that it helps you feel full, and it keeps us regular, and there's a lot of evidence that it prevents chronic diseases and is a habitat for bacteria. There's a lot of information about the friendly bacteria, and here we have a little picture that I got from the internet. The whole notion that we that we live together with bacteria in our body is becoming more and more important, and the one way to provide a habitat for the bacteria in your body is to eat plenty of fiber. To mention it again, it's important to remember that if you have meat or poultry, fish or dairy, none of that has fiber in it. Animals do not have fiber. So if you do, in every meal, if you do eat an animal product, you should always eat it with plant foods to make sure that you're getting the fiber. So let's talk a little bit about some of the nutrients that we said that we wanted to get. In the world of nutrition, they break down a whole of natural nutrients into macronutrients and micronutrients. So in all the foods that are on this slide up there, just a small representation. The point here is that if you're having the whole food and it's a natural food, then you can be assured of getting most of your macronutrients and micronutrients in the same meal. Macronutrients are divided into three groups: proteins, carbohydrates, and oils and fats. They call those lipids. And as far as proteins go, your face, your eyes, your teeth, everything that you can touch really in your body is made out of protein, although the fat tissues, what they call them, the adipose tissues, those are packed full of oils and fats they call fatty acids. And we'll discuss some of those in detail in a moment. As far as the proteins go, you've got from what I can tell from the experts, you've got over 100,000 proteins. And all of these are made from little building blocks called amino acids. And you have to get these amino acids in your diet. That's why they always refer to as protein as being so important. The amino acids, we can make many of them in our body, but there are 8 what they call essential amino acids. And if you don't get those from your diet, you're out of luck. I have a little picture there of of a telephone, and that's to remind me to kind of make an example. We use telephone numbers all over the world with 7, 8, 9 digits. And just think, if you were missing just one digit or two digits, and you could kind of compare those to some of the essential amino acids. Just think of all the number of people you couldn't contact anymore because you're just missing one of those numbers in the telephone number. So even though 8 essential amino acids seems like not such a big deal, it just wipes out, if you're just missing a couple of those in your diet, it just wipes out thousands and thousands of proteins that you won't make. And you need these proteins to repair your blood vessels, your heart vessels, your kidneys, your eyes, and of course what's dear to most of us, our outward appearance, our skin and our hair and whatnot. These are all made out of proteins. Now carbohydrates, it's really a miracle when you think about it, but plants make carbohydrates from just basically 3 things: from sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. So every plant that you see, there's a leaf over there, that leaf, that plant took energy from the sun and converted that energy with the help of water and carbon dioxide into sugars and into fiber. And we consume both in a healthy diet. And what we're doing is we're actually getting the energy from the sun indirectly into our food. And we're able to use that in our body. Now, there is a number of people who believe that carbohydrates are not an essential nutrient because we can make them in the body. Dr. Westman is a proponent of that theory, of questioning whether or not a carbohydrate is essential or not. And the reason is because the body can make glucose from the breakdown of amino acids and from some of the functional groups inside of a triglyceride. But I think the main thing here to remember is that the energy that we use in our body will be coming from the sugars and the fiber and the proteins and the fat structures in plants. And we will be, if we don't, we're either going to get that energy from the plants directly, or we're going to get the energy from an animal that eats plants. But one way or another, it's the energy from the sun that we are using in our body for our energy. The last macronutrient they refer to as lipids, and in popular language we call those oils and fats. Now, good fats are to be distinguished from the bad fats, and we'll talk about that in detail in a moment. But the good fats are a source of energy. They're the building blocks of all of our cell walls in our body. They're the building blocks of many of the hormones. They're essential for proper digestion, and they're essential for some of the vitamins that we need in our body. Good fats are not the cause of obesity and chronic disease. That is the kind of the new thinking on fats, so that the fats that you would get, for example, in avocado and nuts and seeds, that seems to be universally recognized for their good fats. There are other doctors and researchers that believe that the fats from eggs and fish and butter should be a healthy addition to anybody's diet. And we'll talk about that also. As far as the micronutrients go, they break those down into three as well: vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals. Phytochemicals, that's kind of a new micronutrient on the block as far as I learned in the last 4 or 5 years. But you can get all these micronutrients as long as you're eating whole and natural foods as well. And you want to be thinking in terms of vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals in everything that you eat. Everything. As far as vitamins go, they are essential for health, and they help, they're cofactors with enzymes and many metabolic processes in the body. They break vitamins down into two groups. There are vitamins that you find in fat, and then there are vitamins that you find in water-based. So if you take fruits, for example, those are water-based, you'd find vitamin C. If you're talking about some of the fats that are in chicken, in eggs, in dairy products, then you'd be talking about some of the vitamins that are fat soluble. That means that you can only find these vitamins in those foods. So we'll talk about some of these individually. But first, we'll talk about minerals and the other, and phytochemicals. Minerals are classified as a micronutrient because you don't need a lot of them, but you certainly do need them, and they're very important for the health of your body, for the functioning of your heart, how your kidneys work, how your brain works. The first mineral up there that you notice there is sulfur. You've all heard of sulfa drugs. Well, your body uses sulfur for all kinds of things inside, and very important, as well as potassium and magnesium. Many of the doctors said that practically the whole population of the world is deficient in many important minerals. And they even go on and talk about some of the trace minerals like iodine and selenium. Iodine, very important for thyroid function. All the minerals you can get if you're eating whole and natural foods, and also you can get a lot of minerals from what they call the natural salts from the sea, or deposits that used to be in the bottom of an ocean but are now have been lifted up by tectonic forces into mountains, like the Himalayan salt, which is really an ancient seabed. As far as phytochemicals go, they are very important to repair your cells, to prevent diseases, and they scavenge and look everywhere for free radicals. So phytochemicals, you can think of them as antioxidants, and normally those are found in fruits and vegetables, although they are found in organ meats as well. And the phytochemicals are something that has been discussed more and more of late as anti-cancer and anti-heart disease and all the rest of it. So in every meal you want to ask yourself, what phytochemicals are contained in the foods we're eating today. And that's, of course, ditto and true also for minerals and all the vitamins. We should mention just a little bit about free radicals. Free radicals are are molecules or compounds in the body that are missing electrons, and they are very highly reactive and destructive to all the tissues in your body. They create inflammation. Basically what's happening, and I have this little scary figure here of a free radical, they go around and they attack other molecules, destroying them because the free radical itself is missing part of its molecule. Typically the part that it's missing would be some electrons in its outer orbit. And I know, Courtney, whenever we talk about chemistry and molecules and all that, you kind of, anyway, we spend more time than, just think of it this way. If I were a free radical and I'm missing an arm and I'm walking around and I see another human being, and if I can just grab that arm and put it onto my body, that's basically what's happening inside your body. These free radicals are missing parts of their molecule that they want, and they'll go anywhere to get them. That's why they are very dangerous, and you want to have all the phytonutrients and phytochemicals that you can at every meal so that you reduce the number of free radicals in your body. Free radicals, by the way, are a natural part of living because we produce them as we metabolize the foods because we use oxygen as part of the whole energy, part of the whole energy path in our body. And whenever we're talking about oxygen, oxygen is always looking around for a couple of electrons to complete its outer shell without getting too complicated. In other words, oxygen is usually missing an arm, and it will go steal an arm from anyone or anything that it can, whether it's a bacteria or some tissue in your heart or in your blood vessels or whatever. Oxygen will go anywhere until it satisfies itself that it's a complete, either a complete atom or a complete molecule. Going back now to vitamins, we said that some vitamins can only be found in fat, and vitamin A is a very good example. Vitamin A is a very powerful antioxidant, so it's always trying to, you see the word oxidant in there in antioxidant, and that is another reference to the whole notion of oxidation, and that's another reference to how electrons are moving. You know, a lot of us really never understood this really, but energy, whether we're talking about energy from plants or the energy in our body that we get from plants or from animals that ate plants, it's all about this movement of electrons. And vitamin A and other antioxidants, they are trying to restore the body's balance after various molecular reactions take place in the body that leave us with free radicals and oxidative damage, which goes back to inflammation. Inflammation is the #1 hottest topic in medicine, because now they've linked inflammation to heart disease, to Alzheimer's, to just about every disease you can think of. They're linking it to inflammation and what they refer to as chronic inflammation. But anyway, back here to vitamin A. It's a powerful antioxidant. You need it for strong bones. You need it even to properly digest your proteins in the meals. You need it for the assimilation of minerals and even for other vitamins. And a note there in the bottom, vitamin A is only found in animal foods. Only in animal foods. It's only in the fat of animal foods, and that's why I mentioned in the beginning that when you're planning your menu, you want to eat the whole animal. You want to eat every part of it. This whole notion in the past years where everyone cut off the fat, well, you're just throwing away vitamin A and some of the other vitamins that are locked up inside fat of animals and some of the fats that are in organ meats and whatnot. Another very important vitamin is vitamin B12. That is another vitamin that is only found in animal foods. And we will be talking about how people who are vegetarian have to understand this whole concept that certain vitamins are only found in animal foods and how they have to supplement their diet. But vitamin B12 is a very important vitamin for all of your nerves, mental development, and nerve function, and just just every part of your body. And if you're not getting that in your diet, you're just going to degenerate and grow old before your time. When we're talking about vitamins A and B12, as far as sources go, I've got a picture of a pig and a chicken and an egg and a milk and a shrimp, and I've got a big X here you see over the vegetables. From what everyone is saying, you cannot find vitamin A or vitamin B12 in any plants. Now, some people will incorrectly state that you can get vitamin A from a leafy vegetable or some other fruit or vegetable or something like that. But the truth of it is, it's only something called beta-carotene, which is a precursor for vitamin A, that you can get from these plants. And the conversion, in other words, our body has to convert beta-carotene to a vitamin A. And the older we get, and if we're not in perfect shape, the ability of our body to convert beta-carotene to vitamin A decreases. So many people are advocating eating the whole animal in order to get the vitamin A that is locked inside of the animal's fats. And so anyway, vitamin B12 is another source of that. Typically would be organ meats, and vitamin B12 is actually pretty hard to find. So you can really research that and find out what are all the sources of vitamin B12 and try to get that. Of course, you can get it from supplements, but that's another story, and I'll address that in a little bit. Vitamin D is another very important nutrient that we need in our diet. Vitamin D is not really a vitamin at all. It's actually a hormone. It's a hormone that helps to make other hormones in the body, and it's helpful for cell-to-cell communication, for many bodily functions, and for disease prevention. The best source of vitamin D for all of us is probably going to be sunlight on a very clear blue day in the midday period. But for some of us who live in the higher latitudes on Earth, getting good sunlight is very difficult. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. As far as the sources for vitamin D, they say that it's best to get your vitamin D in the middle of the day, from 10 to 2 p.m. and just for a few minutes per side. The vitamin D is made in the body from the radiation effects of what they call UVB, which is a part of the spectrum of sunlight. There are some other sources of vitamin D that can come from seafood, from organ meats, from raw dairy, from eggs, and also from mushrooms that have been dried in the sun as well. Vitamin D is very important. We just can't get enough vitamin D. Another nutrient that we can't get enough of is cholesterol. Cholesterol is an essential fat, and it's used in every cell in the body. There are some people that estimate that there are over 45 trillion cells in the body, and each one of those cell walls, so if this is a cell and the cell wall is there, there's a cholesterol molecule there in every single one of those cell walls. And these slides are taken from Dr. Peter Attia, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, and we will be reviewing some of his points later on in the video here. We will also be reviewing a whole discussion about cholesterol and heart disease. But it's just something to remember here that cholesterol is very important for your health, very important. And you want to, and the cholesterol that we're talking about is good cholesterol, not cholesterol that has been damaged by heat, by frying, by exposure to oxygen, by being refined as part of some product that has been put in a box or in a bag. You want the cholesterol in its most natural state, in its most pristine form, so that when you consume it and it goes into your body knows where to put it to its best use. I should also say that your body, cholesterol is so important that your own body will make it. It's made in your liver, and I've heard that the body will make 70 or 80% of all the cholesterol that it needs from your liver. However, the extra 15 or 20% that you don't make in your liver should come from very good dietary sources, and that is only from animal foods. It's only in animal foods. There are plants do not make cholesterol, and that kind of goes back into what we said, what I said earlier, and that was that plants make sugars and they make fibers, and that's their structure. But humans, we use bones, and we have a different type of cell wall, and in our cell wall we use cholesterol. So cholesterol is very important, and in every meal I eat, I'm judging the type and amount of cholesterol that I'm getting. Some of the functions that we've mentioned here about the cell membrane, or how cholesterol helps build the cell walls. It is also the body's repair, one of the body's repair substances. It forms parts of the nerves and most of our brain. There are a lot of people that talk about the benefits of cholesterol, and these are some of the points that they make over and over again, that it's a building block and a precursor to hormones such as vitamin D, such as the sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, and it helps to digest other dietary fats, and it helps to keep the integrity of your intestines in your gut. And it's also an antioxidant. So again, cholesterol will try to repair oxidative damage in the body. And there again, down below, cholesterol is only in animal foods. So this whole notion of whole and natural foods, I have these little cartoon characters here: protein, fat, carbs, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, and fiber. And I have them all linked together, just linked, because if you're not eating whole and natural foods, you're not going to be getting all of these macronutrients and micronutrients that are linked together and that are forming the essential goodness of all the foods that you want to be eating. So this whole concept of linked and what's been delinked, if you will. Delinked, I never used that word before, but another word for it would be processing or refining. So you want all of our foods that we're eating to be linked in their natural state. I guess I'm spending a minute or two longer than you may think is necessary, but if you go into most of the mini-marts and supermarts all over the world, most of the foods, or most of the products, I don't even want to call them foods, most of the products there are items that have been de-linked. In other words, they've been separated out. The fiber's been tossed away. All the phytochemicals tossed away. Maybe most of the minerals, maybe most of the vitamins. Maybe what they've kept are just some of the carbohydrate inside, some of the grains. But these are products. These are not food. And Courtney, you and I, and our younger brother, Colin, we always used to discuss this whole notion of these processed products. And the reason that they are to be avoided is because all of these macronutrients and micronutrients have been de-linked. They've been torn apart, they've been separated, they've been thrown away. So if you can concentrate on whole and natural foods, and that's your diet, It's really as simple as that. This whole discussion about food as part of a healthy lifestyle, it just comes down to that. Make sure that everything is linked together in its natural state. If you can follow that rule, you can grow and grow old as with your teeth and your eyes and your immunity as originally designed. Call it your genetic potential. And as far as Courtney, you've got children, and they're having children, and those children are going to have children. The lesson there is that the child's health starts long before conception. It starts when the mother was years before thinking of even having a family, and probably started from the mother's childhood. So we pass on many attributes, and both positive and negative, to our children by what we are doing ourselves. Just a little note here about immunity. If you're eating only whole and natural foods, your immunity just gets a tremendous boost. And just to share that for a moment, if you have a diet that is high in products that are not whole and natural foods, your immunity may be 10%. Your ability to fight diseases and bacteria and viruses, just a small fraction of what you can of what you can be if you eat whole and natural foods. As long as we are talking about whole and natural foods, let's, in part 4 here, let's talk about what we mean by refined products, and let's compare those to whole and natural foods. There's a corn cob, and in the refining, and if you refine it and process it, one product that comes out will be corn oil. The corn oil is a refined product. A refined product. And I just have one comment to make about that, and that is, that means get rid of it. Same thing for something like another example. Take a fresh fruit like an apple and refine that and call it apple juice. It's not apple juice. I'm not really sure what it is anymore, but all the fiber's gone. A lot of the other items and phytochemicals that were inside there, inside of an apple, they're all gone. So all the experts are saying get rid of these boxed juices and other sweetened beverages because they're just a disaster as far as our health is concerned. Now, one of the major refined products in the world is sugar, and as you may know, that comes primarily from corn, beets, or sugar cane. Corn, beets, and sugar cane in their natural state, if you were trying to eat those, would be okay. But when you refine them to get sugar, that sugar is in a concentrated, denatured form that was never intended by nature to be consumed by man. It just wasn't. The whole point about the refining process is that it removes the fiber, most of the nutrients, most of the vitamins, minerals, enzymes, and phytochemicals, leaving you, I've got a picture there of the apple, going to that apple juice again, a picture of the whole grains there going to white bread. The white bread is just a shadow of what it was originally. And if our goal is to eat whole and natural foods, white bread and apple juice and the millions of other products like them that are refined would be off the menu. Now, in this video I'm going to be referring to refined sugars, carbs, and oils. We've talked about how sugar cane and corn and beets are manufactured to make sugar. And we've talked about how some of the grains, they're refined away. The fiber and other nutrients are refined away to make flour. And I call those two things, the refined sugars and the refined flours, I just call them refined carbs. So RC for refined carbs. And the industrial oils, those are items that are made from perhaps corn, peanuts, soy. These are natural whole foods that have now been refined with the objective of producing at least one product that I've noted here is the industrial oils from that. The industrial oils, I should add, are a perfect example of a terrible, bad fat, as opposed to the good fats that are found in whole and natural foods. So I've come up with this little abbreviation here called RCO. And in this video it will stand for sugar, flour, and industrial oils. And the RC is again the refined carbs and the oils, so RCOs. Now all of these RCOs share one thing in common, and that is they all contain huge amounts of free radicals. These are molecules that are damaged, like a crazy person that's missing an arm and goes around into society grabbing an arm off of somebody else randomly. So free radical is something you don't want. You don't want it in your diet. You just don't want it in the house. You don't want your friends to have it, and you're sorry when you walk around and you see it in society that mostly everybody's diet is a smorgasbord of free radicals. We'll just talk a little bit about the refined grains just to make this clear. White rice, noodles, white bread, even the wheat breads, because many of those were refined and the bran and a lot of the vitamins and minerals were stripped out, and then some bran pieces may have been sprinkled back in just for show. But when you add all these items, and of course cookies and cakes, all you're doing is they're all what I would call RCOs. You don't want them. They're refined carbs and oils. And they are just full of free radicals. Now most of the other products that are made include chemicals that are made in laboratories. Flavor enhancers, colors, preservatives, stabilizers. These all sound perhaps like very small amounts and somewhat innocent, but it's only because we don't know. We don't have the educational background to really appreciate what they're doing in the body. They are dangerous. They are free radicals. They're interfering with all kinds of metabolic functions in our body. They should be avoided. And you can compare the ingredient lists when you see something that's whole and natural, and that is, are they using all of it? Are they using 100% of a given grain or vegetable or whatever it's going to be? Are they using all of it, in other words, a whole piece, and is it a natural ingredient? Another example here, corn, and it's upsetting to see because the whole world seems to be becoming a gigantic cornfield. But with corn, they make the oils, they make plastics, they make alternative gasoline fuels, they make sweeteners called high fructose corn syrup, and they make all kinds of other ingredients and things that are put into these refined products. So it's just a recipe again for a free radical. That's all it is, and should be avoided. Margarine is another little example here where they've taken oil from a soybean, they've extracted it, they've extracted and denatured the proteins that are in soy. They've added some chemicals, potassium sorbate and some diglycerides that are used to kind of mix oils and water so that they'll mix together and form a little, a structure like margarine there. Anyway, when you see margarine, try to remember that one. Try to remember that face. And for that matter, anytime you see an RCO, try to remember that face. Creamer. You know, these fake milks and creams and all that. Hydrogenated soybean oil, emulsifiers, soy proteins, chemicals, and a salt, which we'll talk about in a little bit, a salt that is completely denatured and something that you don't want. So, really, when we talk about RCOs, they're just everywhere around us. All the junk food, all the fast food, they're all made from refined carbohydrates and industrial oils and salt. So you have to ask yourself, where's the fiber? Where are the nutrients? The answer is practically all thrown out and substituted with molecules and concoctions that our body was never ever meant to consume, let alone try to make structures and like our skin or heart vessels or kidneys and liver and all the rest of it. Oh, I have that little image of that baby with a pacifier, and it, you know, really, when you think about it, all these junk foods and fast foods and RCOs, it's not food. See, they're all just products. And I started to think, really, they're about as close as we come to a pacifier that most people stick in their mouth, or I'm sorry, the mother will put a pacifier in a baby's mouth just to kind of have that mouth doing something or occupied or something like that. Well, RCOs are probably no different. They are the adult pacifier. They're the pacifier for adults. So how's that? As far as the packaging, RCO packaging, they're found in the boxes, in the cans, in the bags. So whenever you see any of those things, try to imagine that fellow, free radical, because you eat those, and somewhere in your body, part of your eye, part of your blood vessel, part of your kidney, part of it is getting destroyed by those products. Because that the whole refining process creates what we call the free radical. And free radicals are very dangerous. I have a little, when I talk to children about this whole topic, I urge them to read the labels. You know, on a lot of these products, the artwork is beautiful. Gorgeous artwork and very inviting, but you have to get your magnifying glass out and find out really what's in there. If it's in a box, in a bag, in a can, you really have to look closely and find out really what's in there and whether or not it has free radicals, whether or not it's been denatured, whether or not the fiber and the nutrients have just been taken away. So in this next section, part number 5, we'll talk about one refined product, and that is one of the most destructive developments in human history came from the discovery of how to make a sweetened product from corn, and it's called high fructose corn syrup. It's a liquid where a sugar called fructose and another one called glucose are mixed together in different proportions, and it's commonly put into soft drinks, sodas, breads, cookies, and they say that it's found its way into just about everything in the market. I refer to this also as a free radical just because of all the destruction that it does inside the human body. I suppose one of the most famous people now that are trying to speak up against refined fructose is Dr. Robert Lustig at the San Francisco Medical Center, where he believes that fructose is refined fructose is the cause of some of the most destructive health problems that we've had in the history of mankind. According to him, fructose is refined fructose. I keep saying the word refined because we want to compare that to fructose in its natural form, which is found in fruits and some vegetables. And in that form, it's in an amount, and it's linked with fiber and other vitamins and minerals, and it's in a proportion that is easily tolerated by the body. And if we're talking about the sugars in fruits and vegetables, we have evolved to be able to assimilate that, to benefit from that. But when we're talking about refined fructose, and specifically the high fructose corn syrup that was made in a laboratory many years ago, that is a poison. And it's processed in the liver as a poison, according to Dr. Lustig. I have a diagram up here. It's really a slide from his YouTube presentation where he goes into the detail about the whole metabolic pathway of high fructose corn syrup. And I suppose it's one of his missions in life at this point to let the whole world know about it. But the bottom line is, if it has high fructose corn syrup in the ingredients, pass it off. Let's talk about sugar and your skin. Your skin is made out of protein. It's made out of collagen, elastin, other things that make you young and beautiful. And I know, Courtney, so I know you're interested in how radiant and beautiful you look. Well, just think of this. Every time you eat something that has refined sugars, added sugars in there, you are damaging your skin. Not only your skin, but every other protein in your body, your eyes, your brain, your heart, your kidneys. And why is that? Because it's a free radical cocktail. You see a picture there of the old lady. That's because when you have sugar, you get old before your time. Now, how does that happen? Sugar does something to proteins, and they call it advanced glycation end products. And basically what that is that these sugar molecules that are running around in your body, they attach itself to a protein and damage that protein. So if the protein were like this without the sugar, by the time the sugar attaches itself, now it's like that, and now that protein can't function anymore. So now you've just wiped out millions of proteins in your body, and all of these refined sugars, of course, are found in RCOs. They're all free radicals. And as Dr. Lustig has pointed out, fructose in the form of high fructose corn syrup is many, many times more capable of destroying proteins. But the table sugar, or the high fructose corn syrup, or all the products that are made with these things, the breads, the cookies, the cakes, the sodas, the ice creams, they all are damaging your body, the proteins in the body, your eyes, your skin, your hair, your kidneys, your brain, your blood vessels. All of these things are made of proteins, and sugar is just attacking them. Enzymes are something that are found in raw fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains. They're found in raw seafood products or milk products, raw meats, raw fish. Many of these things are fermented foods. And enzymes, like we said before, are special proteins that are very important, so important that we'll have a little special discussion about them now. there are over 20,000 different types of enzymes, maybe a lot more than that, I don't know. And they say about 22 of them are used to help us digest our food. These enzymes are involved in every part of our bodily function, not just digestion, but the fight or flight, our emotions, our rational thinking, just all of it. And by the way, all these little enzymes, I've got a picture there of a molecule, Courtney, don't be upset with molecules. They are complex, but if you just understand that these are very, very tiny little structures, and if we're talking about enzymes, even tiny little minerals like copper, iron, zinc, magnesium, these are little micronutrients that are very important to make an enzyme. So in every one of our meals, or in every one of my meals, I'm thinking, okay, am I getting all of my macro and micronutrients today, because I want a full complement of enzymes. I want to be able to make enzymes in the body, and if I can, I want to get enzymes from the food. Now, if we're talking enzymes from the food, we have to have a little bit more detail. When we're talking about, let's back up for a moment here. When we're talking about enzymes for digestion, remember we said earlier that proteins are made up of amino acids. Amino acids are the little building blocks. And we said that carbohydrates are made up of sugars. And it's also true for fats and the different kinds of fats. We have those essential fatty acids, if you recall. The enzymes in our body are what help break all these things down. So I compared that to a tree, and the enzyme is like the saw that would be making the tree into lumber so that we could build a house. So if we eat food, compare that to a tree, we need enzymes. Comparing that to a saw, that would make lumber, and the lumber is something that we can use now to make a house. And it's something that enzymes, which is the saw, break down all these amino acids, or the proteins, break down all the carbohydrates, and break down all the fats so that our body can use them. So enzymes are very important. And some people believe that we only have a limited capacity to make enzymes during our whole life. So they always stress, try to get as many enzymes as you can from the food that you eat. And that's why I wanted to mention the point here on this next slide. And that is that when we use enzymes to digest our food, in the previous slide I had a saw there, but here you have some scissors. So again, the enzymes they're trying to chop up these foods that we're eating, these macronutrients, the proteins, the carbohydrates, the fat, and they're trying to break them up into smaller components, sugars, amino acids, fatty acids, so that we can use them in the body. Now, most of the enzymes that we use to digest food, for example, are made in something called the pancreas. And that's a little organ that's near the liver in our midsection here in the body. And the enzymes that we use are there to help break down the food. They also help release the nutrients, and they can also be helpful in fighting disease and boosting your immune function. Now, enzymes are very fragile. You can destroy them if the temperature is more than 117 or so, or 47 C. So if something is too hot to touch, that's an easy test. That means that the enzymes were probably destroyed in that food. So in your daily diet, you want to be looking for, you want to have foods that have never been heated, overheated, to the point where the enzymes are destroyed in that food. And we'll talk about what food choices those might be, safe choices. Now, most of the refining process destroys enzymes because refining most foods, it not only destroys the enzymes but removes the fiber and the minerals and the, it's just very destructive to food in its natural state. Here's another little image that I got from the internet. It looks like kind of a ribbon with a bunch of different colors, and that's kind of an artistic representation of what a protein looks like, and specifically what an enzyme, which is a protein, would look like. And that structure can be denatured, changed, turned into something unnatural by heat or by light. So that's why one wants to avoid foods that have denatured enzymes unless absolutely necessary. Now, enzymes are very helpful for as far as predigestion goes. There are many people that, as far as grains go, for example, they recommend soaking grains for at least a day, or even a little longer, so that the grain would sprout. And then there are a lot of people who believe in fermenting grains, and the whole fermentation process will create enzymes and neutralize a number of anti-enzymes that are naturally found in grains. So the point of this slide is to, if you're going to eat a grain, you want to prepare it in one of these three ways. You want to soak it, and again, we're talking about a whole natural grain here now. You want to prepare it so that you soak it, you sprout it, or you ferment it. And that not only what that's doing in many cases is releasing a number of vitamins and minerals that are in the grains, and there are enzymes that are released in the grains, and there are anti-enzymes. Anti-enzymes are molecules that are there that are keeping the grain from sprouting, from growing, until the time is right. If it were a grain just growing naturally out in nature, the anti-enzymes would disappear and allow that little seed to germinate and start to grow only if rain and soil and all the conditions were ready to support the growth of a plant. But most of the processed foods, they skip all these three steps. They just go right to a refining process, and a lot of the vitamins and minerals are never allowed to blossom, if you will, from grains, and they certainly are not involved in fermenting grains. So you just get a very unnatural, very dangerous product. So if a grain does not pass these 3 steps, one of these 3 steps, don't eat it. And that applies for all the breads, all the pastas, the noodles, just everything out there. If it's not passing one of these 3 steps, you're not helping yourself. A little bit about fermentation. I like the little picture there of the friendly bacteria again. The bacteria release enzymes that help us to digest these grains. They destroy these molecules that are preventing the grain from germinating. They're called anti-enzymes and other chemicals. These are very unhealthy compounds and chemicals to ingest, to consume, if you are not going through the one of those 3 steps. That is the soaking, the letting it germinate, sprout, or going through a fermentation process. Let's talk a little bit about fermentation because it applies much wider than just to there are a lot of people that believe that wheat is a part of a grass, and humans were never meant to eat grass. Goats, water buffalo, cows, they eat grass. So do ducks, by the way. But grass is not a human food, and it's very difficult to digest. When you ferment grains, you unlock a number of nutrients. Why is that? Because you're allowing the helpful bacteria to chip away and denature a lot of these anti-enzymes and other chemicals, one's called phytic acids. These are compounds that are very destructive in our body. Very destructive. Another one of the most destructive chemicals in wheat is gluten and other products in wheat, rye, barley, oats, I believe. And the fermentation process will help denature a lot of the... In other words, they'll turn what was a grass, a food for animals, into potentially a food for humans. Why is that? Because the bacteria are consuming it first. And what we end up eating are the byproducts of what the bacteria created. A typical example of a fermented bread is something called a sourdough bread. This is an example here in this slide where a whole grain, and you can see all the fibrous parts there in the outer shell and the germ, and those are there in a whole grain form. If you take that whole grain and you grind it slowly so that you don't destroy the enzymes that are naturally occurring in the grain itself, and even the bacteria and the yeast and whatnot that are on the grains, and then you mix that with water, you can just ferment it for weeks or days, and then you can allow that fermented mixture to rise and then bake it. And now what you've done is potentially the yeast and the bacteria in the sourdough bread have now denatured to a very large extent some of the problems and the reasons people say to avoid grains entirely, because it's not a human food. It's a food for what they call ruminant animals that have 4 stomachs, I believe. I'm not sure how it applies to ducks, but at least the goats and the cows and all that, they have 4 stomachs. And one of the first bags that they call a stomach is a big receptacle full of bacteria that digest these grains and grasses first. So I might add that for years over here, I've been making our own sourdough bread and letting it ferment as long as we can. And we make a current bread now out of wheat and rye. And anyone who wants the recipe is welcome. As I said, I'm in Southeast Asia, and I can send a recipe if you would like by email. But how to make sourdough breads, there are whole groups and associations on the internet that are specializing in how to make sourdough bread. And that's where I got my information on how to do it myself. Another very important fermented product, fermented vegetables. The pictures there are some fermented cabbage and beets. These things are just chock full of enzymes. Again, now the temperature of these fermented products never got over 117 degrees Fahrenheit, or never more than 47 degrees centigrade. And we're allowing these good bacteria to predigest these foods. And they're just full of enzymes and more bacteria that help populate the gut. They're very helpful for digestion and general health. Another popular fermented product are all the dairy foods. For example, fermented raw goat milk. If the goat is allowed to eat grass in the open pasture, and it gets the personal attention and care and is tested and whatnot, many people believe that raw goat milk is a wonderful thing to drink, although the FDA, or the equivalent of the state, the FDA at the state level in many states, is on a campaign to stamp all of this to stop it. I think California allows raw milk and tests it. But some of the benefits of the raw milk are that it has all of the enzymes that are still in there. And if you ferment these raw dairy products, you allow the bacteria to gobble up the sugars in the milk, which is the lactose. And if the animal is in an open range and they're not being fed hormones in their foods and all that, and no antibiotics because they're being force-fed other types of unnatural foods for it, like corn and soybean and that sort of thing. You can, these fermented foods are can be very beneficial according to some people. And these include kefir. There are even fermented butters. Yogurt, of course, is a fermented food, but only if it's really a natural yogurt without added sweeteners and stabilizers and emulsifiers and all the other things that are found in commercial yogurts, which you want to avoid like the plague. If you can find cheese, cheese is a fermented product as well. And if it's made from raw cheese, some people believe that's a lot better for us than cheese that has been heated, or the milk was heated to a high temperature before they made the cheese. So, as far as the fermentation process goes, you can ferment grains and dairy, vegetables. Maybe you can ferment some nuts and seeds, although I haven't done that myself. You can You can, if you don't want to do the fermented route because you don't like the taste, it certainly is beneficial to soak these foods overnight, especially if we're talking about beans and grains, because you want to let the seed or the plant or the bean or the grain believe that it's ready to, that the conditions are right to sprout, to germinate. And that releases all these vitamins and minerals. And it also neutralizes some of the anti-chemicals that are there in the coating of these beans and grains, so that they don't disrupt your own metabolism. Some people will point out that if you don't soak beans and grains and whatnot, that the chemicals and the compounds that are naturally occurring in these foods, if you just eat them right away, straight away, without preparing them properly, you won't be able to assimilate your iron or other nutrients in your body. So it's very important to understand the role of enzymes and the role of soaking and sprouting and fermentation in all of these foods that are not naturally really a food for man without preparation. Just a little bit here about organic foods, fruits, vegetables, dairy, animal. Everyone says, see if you can find a local source, someone that's not using any pesticides, herbicides, and somebody that believes in a GMO-free type of operation. The whole topic of GMO is beyond the scope of this video, but just in a nutshell, we're opening doors there where genetically engineered plants and bacteria and other microorganisms are creating substances and organisms that never existed before in nature. And it's a very serious problem, and it should be something that all of us should be concerned about, because these things can damage the DNA in our body and reprogram the blueprint of how every cell in your body works. So, very serious topic indeed. If we're talking about animals, we've heard about free range and open pasture and all that. And that gets into this whole topic of, if you're going to eat an animal product, if you're going to consume eggs or ducks or chicken or milk or poultry or the steaks and all the rest of it, you have to make sure that you're only eating the animal product from an animal that ate the food that it was naturally meant to eat. An example would be cows. They eat grass and hay, or at least grass, and they don't eat soybean and corn as their staple diet. Nor do chickens eat corn and soy as their staple diet. They eat grass and bugs and insects and things like that. If you stick to animals that are eating what they were meant to eat naturally, you'll be fine. You'll have the proper nutrient balance. For example, omega-3, which many of you have heard about. And Courtney, I know you've heard about that, and we'll try to talk about that a little bit here in a bit. The point of it is free range, open pasture. That's the only type of animal product you want to eat. If it's something in the major supermarket chains, don't eat it, because those animals were just fed soy and corn or other parts of animals or whatnot. It's a disaster. Same thing goes for fish. You want to eat wild fish that are eating food in their natural habitat. Fish like that are high in omega-3 and a very good substance to eat, according to many experts. You can contrast that to, by the way, we've talked about omega-3 here a little bit. It's found primarily in animal products that are eating, their natural food that they were meant to eat. And a lot of people believe that the evolution of man from the early primates, the chimpanzees and the gorillas and all those are primate cousins. The whole evolution of man probably came about, and that's why I've got this here, probably came about because we found sources of omega-3 and another companion molecule called DHA that came from seafoods, and it led to the development of our brain. Omega-3 is one of the essential fatty acids. Essential means that our body can't make it by ourselves. We have to have we either have to eat it as omega-3, or we have to eat it, we have to eat precursors that can be made into omega-3. For example, if you're talking about the plant world, that would be something like flax seeds. But omega-3 will reduce inflammation and reduces disease. Now we should talk a little bit about industrial oils and why those are so dangerous. Industrial oils contain a lot of something called omega-6 and many different forms of omega-6. That's why omega-6 gets kind of a scary face here, because it's involved in inflammation, heart disease, obesity, diabetes, chronic diseases, and loss of brain function. So every time you reach for a bottle or a plastic bottle of peanut oil and soybean oil and canola oil and even rice bran oil for that matter, or soybean and corn oil, that's the big one. You can just imagine this omega-6 character and just try to remember one thing: you don't need it and you don't want it, because you don't want heart disease, inflammation, diabetes, and all the other chronic diseases. Here's a little graph that was put together by a Dr. Lanz, where he goes through the level of omega-3 content in corn, peanut, sunflower, soybean, canola. It's just disgusting that these products, which are made from corn or soybean or whatnot, it's disgusting that on the one hand the American government subsidizes these products, and on the other they are found in so many foods, the so-called industrial oils. They're in so many processed products. That's right, we're not going to call them food. Processed products. And it's disgusting because we are paying people to grow these items, and then these items are being put into processed products that are destroying our health. It's irrational. Fish farms, we ought to talk about that. They're being fed many times soybean and grains of different kinds They were never meant in nature. They were meant to eat their normal food supply, but they were never meant to eat soys and grains and corns and that sort of thing. They're swimming in their own waste material. The food that they eat, these grains and soys and whatnot, they're injected with artificial color, and they mix some artificial nutrients in there, and they just don't have the omega-3 there. So the fish farm foods, they get another stamp of our friend here, the scary green monster. So as far as farm fish goes, off the menu. So all the other factory products, you've got the farm chicken. These things are full of omega-6 grains, corn and soy, very high in omega-6, and very little to zero of omega-3. These factory products, chickens and eggs and all that, they put growth hormones in there. They do that because they want the chickens to produce more eggs, and they want the chickens to grow faster so they can get them to market. But if you find most of these chicken products, whether it's in a supermarket or in the frozen section, you just have to remember it's something that you don't want and something you don't need. So I hope that's clear. That's my little joke there. The farmer's looking up at this huge chicken saying, well, I guess I put too many growth hormones in your feed, but that's just kind of a sad joke on the tale of what's happening to the world's food supply. And I emphasize the world because the technology that is allowing all of these factory products to multiply all over the earth is very sad indeed. So one of the problems of all these artificial processed oils, industrial oils, is all the whole process that they go through to extract the oil. They've got to bleach it, they've got to deodorize it, they've got to heat it, they hydrogenate it. Hydrogenation is something that, Corn, I bet that we don't know too much about, but I'll try to give you a couple of references about that in just a moment. But just understand that all these industrial oils create free radicals. They're oxidized and they're rancid, and that's why they're deodorized and they're bleached. The amount of omega-3 in these things are zilch, zero, a disaster. Here's a little slide that was done by Brian Sanderoff. He's a pharmacist somewhere on the eastern seaboard there, and he gets a very good example of how what hydrogenation is, and the whole reason that people would want to do that. He's one of the experts that I have listed in this video. But basically what he's doing is, if you can see up here, there's two empty spots down here in this little red circle. And if you apply heat and do some other things to this molecule, you can switch one of these hydrogens to the other side. And that's what has happened down here. And it straightens out the molecule. Up here, this molecule is bent downwards. And that has enormous that makes an enormous difference in the refined product, whether the fats can pack together, whether they have a long shelf life. But one thing you can believe, if you see the word hydrogenated oil of some kind, it's not done for your benefit. It's done for the store's benefit, for the manufacturer's benefit, for the benefit of the farmer who's making these soy and corn products, not for your benefit, because the health is very destructive, the effects on your health. So the point of this whole first part of this whole discussion is that you want to think of your body not only as what you see in the mirror. If you look in the mirror and you see your face and whatnot, that's great, we've got to do that. But what you want to do is think at the cell level. You want to think at the cell level. And just to kind of emphasize what I mean by that, I've got a little graphic there of the Earth and the United States. And you blow that up and you see Texas. And you blow that up and you see people, humans, playing in a lake somewhere in Texas. Well, you can't see these people if you're just looking at the Earth. And it's the same thing in your body. If you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you've got to understand that there are blood vessels and hair follicles and collagen and other structures made out of proteins and many other molecules. And this is a microscopic picture of what your face is made out of, what the skin on your face is made out of. And you can blow that up even more, just like we took the state of Texas and we expanded that. We zoomed in and we saw people swimming in a lake. It's the same thing here. If you look at it at the cell level, there are millions and millions of cells just in this blown up picture of your skin. But down here at the cell level, you've got DNA, protein molecules, you've got enzymes, phytochemicals, you have everything going on here at the cell level, and that's where we've got to focus our attention. We focus on the detail of the cell, and the rest of your body will be fine. So the point of it here is, if we eat whole and natural foods that are full of all the natural nutrients and fiber, and we get our vitamin D, preferably from sunshine, that our body, our skin, our organs, our structure, our protein, all of that will be in good shape. But only if it's whole and natural foods. If it's the factory products and the processed products, you're heading down the Bongo Straits without a paddle. So there are a couple of superfoods that I try to have every day, or wish I could have every day. Sometimes it's kind of hard to get. But the green leafy vegetables, tomatoes, soaked flax seeds. Remember, I said to soak your seeds before you consume them. And we not only soak them, but then we blend them because flax seeds are so hard. We ferment our vegetables. We have fresh fruits. Mushrooms are always a good one to have, kind of a superfood. So is coconut. If we have any whole grain, it's going to be a sourdough whole grain. I like to eat cocoa nibs. I love to have avocados and berries. All the free-range animal products free-range animal products. Animals that are eating what nature intended them to eat. And the wild salmon and sardines and that sort of thing. Full of omega-3, DHA, and other very important nutrients for the brain. Just a word here about supplements. Now for myself, and speaking only for myself, I take no supplements and I'm not on any medications. And I consider myself lucky because I've been concentrating more on getting avoiding all the medications and getting all the nutrients and the fiber from whole and natural foods. But one of the reasons I always felt that way is because if you take B vitamins, for example, maybe there are we've heard of B6 and B12, B17, I think there's a B17. But maybe those B vitamins go all the way to 100. And I'd rather get the B vitamins in a source that was whole and natural than I would from a source from some laboratory. Especially some laboratory that's making supplements from chemical compounds that they mix together in their endless chemical reactions. I try to believe that food is medicine. So my first choice for any medicine would be to get it from whole and natural foods. On the negative side, there are studies, and maybe these are done by anti-vitamin people, I don't know, but these are studies that show that people who supplemented their diet with vitamin A, vitamin E, beta-carotene, they had an increased rate of mortality. There are other studies that say that taking omega-3 provide no benefit. No benefit. And if I were ever to take a supplement, and I'm not saying that I won't, but it would be something from some whole and natural food source and only by a true health expert that is, really has my future and my health as the primary consideration. Some of the data here about the vitamin A and vitamin E that was provided by T. Colin Campbell and also by Dr. Jeffrey Tice, some of the experts that I've listed in this video. And I think both of them would agree that you want to get all of your vitamins and minerals, if you can, from the foods that you eat, whole and natural foods. And that was the reason for all that picture there of all the vegetables. So, there's my little linked group there. A feast at every meal. So every time you eat, have a feast and have it be whole and natural foods. We'll talk a little bit here about condiments. In the world of salt, you want to see if you can get the sea salts. They're sold all over the place, some from Ireland, some from Pakistan. They call it Himalayan salt. I think it's very far from the Himalayas, but that's another story. The point of it is, it's an ancient seabed, and evolutionarily speaking, we all came from the oceans anyway, and our body has evolved to use many, many trace minerals, and there are at least 85 trace minerals in sea salt. When you use regular salt that you get at the supermarket, the supermarket, people check how old you are before you go into a bar. How old you are before you can buy cigarettes. they really ought to have some sort of a minimum age before you're allowed to go in the supermarket. Anyway, that's not a joke. That's, people ought to really understand what they're doing before they go into a supermarket. But anyway, back to sea salt. In the salt that's sold at the average supermarket, that's only one compound, only one molecule, and that is sodium chloride. I think it's 98% only sodium chloride. And that's what people think of as salt. But Courtney, really there are many salts, and your body uses them in very minute amounts to make the enzymes, to make the proteins. You never want to have normal table salt anywhere near your home. You always want to use the sea salt. And that's true for sauces and spices and vinegars. You want to seek out the natural vinegars made by natural fermentation, or a natural action of letting apple juice or grape juice or whatnot sit for a period of time where the bacteria can make the acetic acids and these other things that are these tastes that we like in vinegars and whatnot. That goes for the spices, that goes for the ketchups of the world and all that. There are wonderful programs on YouTube for natural ketchups and natural sauces, and that's where you want to be. You don't want to be buying these products in the supermarket because they're full of high fructose corn syrup and stabilizers and emulsifiers and flavor enhancers and all the things that are free of full radicals and just totally denatured. Monosodium glutamate is another totally, it's a neurotoxin and in a concentrated form. Some people may argue that, well, monosodium glutamate is found in nature. If that's true, it would be the equivalent of 1 grain of sand at the beach in terms of its natural ratio. So again, it's an added, it's something that is extracted from some other food, some other real food, and then in a concentrated form added to sauces and concoctions and processed foods of all kinds. Monosodium, avoid it. It's a neurotoxin. Just a little note here about barbecues and microwaves. When you heat proteins and other food substances to a high temperature, you denature them. So you've heard noises in the past that some people say, well, barbecued foods are cancer causing and all that. The reason is because when foods are heated to a high temperature, temperatures that, if it becomes carbon black, okay, that's definitely very high. But let's say that it's just a normal 350 degrees Fahrenheit. You really want to try to limit the foods that you're eating in that category because the temperatures do create problems for your body to assimilate these things. And the same thing goes for microwaves. Now I have a microwave here, but I use it to sterilize things, and I use it to heat ceramic pots and things, and then I discard the water. I don't even ingest water that's been subject to a microwave process, because I always imagine a molecule, let's say it's like this in nature, and suddenly it's kinked by going through a microwave radiation process. So I avoid any food and every beverage. Nothing is microwaved. Off the list. And of course smoking, well, I think everyone knows all about the problems of smoking. So we'll you just have to stop. You can just go all the way around the human body, the bladder, the colon, the kidneys, the larynx, the brain, the heart. You can just go all the way around. Smoking is good for nothing, as they say. Not good for anything. So you got to stop. So on that note, I will pause the video here. And normally I swim for an hour in the morning before breakfast. And I'll explain that in a later video. But today it's coming up here on 11:30. And I think this is a good time to take a break. And we will resume this video presentation at a later time. So, thank you. See you soon.